What's up, everybody? It's This Week at Omnia. We're going to be going over some fishing reports submitted by you, some of the hottest bites going on, some of the hottest baits going on. We're also going to be going over the best selling baits for this week at Omnia Fishing. Top products this week. I'm loving this one because it's a little different. It's been the same thing week after week, which is pretty funny to see. You can tell what techniques work during certain times of the season. But we sell nationally all over the country, so you think it would be pretty diverse as the different seasons affect parts of the country differently. But it's been a lot of jackhammers, a lot of the jerkbait stuff, all that kind of stuff for a long time now. But we got some different stuff this week, which is nice to see. We got some people are starting to stock up on some lines. So our hottest selling line right now has been the FC Sniper from Sunline here. The D-Bomb from Missile Baits has been hot. This is a super versatile bait. It works in cold water, but it is a summertime flipping bait for me, right? I use this thing when the milfoil gets real thick on our lakes in the middle of the summer, but a lot of people are buying them right now because they're not super aggressive flappers on the back of this thing. You can fish this thing slow in cold waters, a jig trailer, or if you're just Texas rigging it, Carolina rigging it, bunch of different ways to fish the D-Bomb. And a little tip here, a lot of people are using them on the back for chatterbait, so I wouldn't doubt if a lot of you are buying it for that reason. Next up, Beast Coast. Man, these guys have come on so super strong for us. This is one of the hottest selling jig brands out there to date. For us, you know, I'm a newbie to Beast Coast. I've known about them for a long time, but I just got some this off season. I haven't actually even thrown one of these things. But boy, they seem to be catching them for a lot of people because we burn through these things. This is their sniper jig, open water sniper style jig. This is a little football head. This could be fished on a spinning rod, BFS tackle. This would be ideal for that kind of stuff. Or even just light baitcaster tackle. You don't need to go as far as, it's heavy enough to throw on traditional casting tackle as well, but super cool colors, awesome little jigs there. Tactical Bassin's got their underspin now from Dirty Jigs. This thing's really nice, got a high quality swivel on it. It's got a metal drop on it for the blade here. So a lot of them have a wire on them, and you see a lot of complaints about them breaking off if you fish them really aggressively. And this being metal, this is a lot more durable than a typical just little single wire that's hanging down below it. So pretty cool underspin here from Dirty Jigs. And lastly, no big surprise, there should always probably be a soft body swim bait on top sellers, right? Because this is probably the hottest category in all soft plastics, in my opinion, for a long time now. In some form or fashion, a boot tail swim bait. They work all over the country, and they're certainly working right now, and they're going to work all summer long, and it doesn't matter where you are in the country. This is a bait that you should have in your boat. This being the Mega Bass Spark Shad. This is one of my favorite soft body swim baits. I believe because they have such a flat back on them, it's easier to control the depth of these. So obviously with different line types and different weighted jig heads or belly hooks, however you want to do it, however you weight it, you can get it down to your desired depth. And I think it helps you because it's so flat and so wide and flat on the back, keep it down. It kind of has a little resistance from coming up. I've been able to fish these on like a half-ounce jig head down like 15+ foot of water and get the majority of my cast, keeping the bait kind of down in that depth range, controlling your rate of retrieve. Super cool swim baits. They're really soft. They're heavily salted and weighted. So you can fish them weightless if you want to. You can cast them super far, and you can control the depth of them really well. So no big surprise that the Mega Bass Spark Shed is making its way up into one of the best sellers. Those are all the hottest products going right now. Next, we're going to get into some fishing reports. First up, we got a fishing report from Waze. Appreciate it, bud. Thanks for sending us this report from Spirit Lake, Iowa. Once again, just like last week, I'm getting pretty jacked up to see some of the reports coming in from up at my neck of the woods. We like to, here at Omnia, take some trips down into this region of Iowa ourselves because they have open bass season right now. We can go down there and start catching them. Waze is catching some smallmouth on a GoldenEye, on an Outcast tackle GoldenEye swim bait head, and a Storm Largo shad. Using braided line and a leader, being able to make really long casts with that little swimmer and fish it deeper. He had some dead vegetation on top of the rocks down there, and water temps are still really cold, 46-degree water temps. So that little soft body swim bait, that little finesse presentation is a killer way to get bit all throughout the year, but especially when almost seems like nothing else is working. You're mimicking the forage base for those smallmouth bass, little minnows down there, and he was able to boat himself some nice smallmouths on the rock piles out there in Iowa. I'm jealous. I can't wait to get down there myself. Next up, we got a crappie report from our buddy Sal. He was out in Clear Lake, Minnesota, fishing for crappies. Simple stuff. He was using artificials, which I love to see. Little jigs, like 1/32 ounce jigs, fishing them with little Bobby Garland plastics, little minnow imitators on the back of his little jig there. Fishing around submerged vegetation. These fish are pre-spawn. They're not as easy to catch right now as they'll be here in the coming weeks, where those shallow waters warm up really fast. Those crappies will push up there, and that's when you see the army of crappie anglers go out and start firing baits around and catching then when they get really easy to catch in those super shallow water. He's still fishing pre-spawn, where they're a little tougher. They're like, it could be anywhere from 5 foot down to 12 foot of water and submerged vegetation out there. He was catching them, like I said, with a little teeny tiny minnow imitator, and you know, pretty soon here, we're going to get those water temps and those shallows up, and they'll be sliding up, and that's when you can get away with throwing the bob around in a little tiny dropper there and using even the same baits, but catching more numbers. Next up, Sal again was out on pool 4. Cool to see you getting out a bunch, bud. Catching some walleyes and saugers, even got into some shovel nose and some white bass. River fishing this time of year, since it's border waters where we are up here in Minnesota with Wisconsin, there is open season right now on some of these species. You can go fish for them. A lot of it's catch and release still, but a lot of it you can do possession since it is considered border waters there. He's using a Demiki vault blade. That is one of the most popular baits for the employees that work here at Omnia Fishing. Since we do live in a very cold part of the country, a blade bait has a lot more of a longer season than it does a lot of places. But down south, because the winters, you can fish all year, a blade bait plays too. It's probably one of the most multi-species artificials there is. He was using that St. Croix Victory, that 710 spinning rod with the new Ballistic MQ. Literally, I have the exact same setup in my garage that I have not used yet because I haven't been able to fish with the new Tatula MQ yet. But he was fishing a hair jig and only got one fish and switched up to that blade bait, which is pretty cool. They wanted a little bit more flash and vibration to trigger that bite. He was fishing rock piles. Fish were feeding on minnows. They're still in that pre-spawn time of year, so good job on breaking down the river there and getting some fish. Hopefully you got to take them home and eat some of them. Bassmaster Elite Series is going on right now. It's that back-to-back week. They fished Murray. We told you about that the week before. Now they're on Santee Cooper, which is throwing everybody some curveballs. Talked to some of the anglers during practice, and man, it was feast or famine. There were people seeing a lot of big fish, but they were not easy to catch, and they were moving. A lot of times when you hear us talk about the spawn, you think easy fishing. Well, that's not always the case. There's 3 phases to the spawn: the pre-spawn, the spawn, and post-spawn. And when you've got fish in all 3 phases of the spawn, it can really throw you for a loop, especially when you throw some weather into the mix. All of a sudden, fish that were on beds move off beds, or new waves of fish come in while you're fishing offshore, which you thought were pre-spawn fish. It can really, really make you have to adjust on the water that day. And we're seeing that happen to the anglers on Santee Cooper right now. It seems like some anglers are struggling immensely even to catch a limit, but some anglers are absolutely braining big ones, like Matt Robertson. Matt Robertson's whipping around a big swim bait. I'm not sure if he's using this Mega Bass 8-inch mag draft or he's throwing that new Berkeley cull shad, but it looks like a few anglers are throwing some big baits out there and getting bites. It's pretty cool to see the glide come into play so much already this year. It's always been a bait that gets thrown by anglers, but you rarely see it playing for the leaders as much as it's been this year. So it's cool to see that these elite level anglers have starting to make the effectiveness of these big swim baits a real player for winning tournaments. It's not just a practice bait or a swing for the fences when you're down 20 pounds of the leader kind of bait anymore. It's actually a pattern that's proving to win tournaments, so it's pretty cool. Other techniques we're seeing play, a lot of bed fishing going on, so I bet you're going to hear about that big bite fighting frog again that we've talked about a whole bunch recently. See a lot of anglers throwing like a wacky worm around those cypress trees. I know that's a big technique at Santee Cooper, flipping a jig and throwing a wacky rig around the cypress trees. I've heard about the top water bite going on. Haven't seen a ton of winding happening, but I bet you it is happening to anglers maybe that aren't on live. But as you can see, it's playing in all three phases of the spawn. My gut is it's a lot more post-spawn than it is pre-spawn, but heck, there's some big giants getting caught offshore, which I'm assuming are some pre-spawners too. So stay tuned to see how Santee Cooper works out. We'll get back to you with a recap on that tournament, on what baits were the baits that the top anglers keyed in on to make some money there in Santee Cooper in South Carolina. All right, that's it for this week at Omnia Fishing. We showed you some of the best sellers. We showed you some good fishing reports. We showed you what are the hot baits going on right now around the whole country, not just the ones related to the fishing reports. We'll be back next week with another This Week at Omnia, where we'll recap what happened at Santee Cooper.